Awesome. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the next webinar on the Lady Leaders series. This has become a topic that I have loved talking to a lot of doctors about, especially doctors newer potentially to owning businesses. But honestly, even doctors, myself included, I remember, I had been in dentistry owning a business for a while, but I didn't really know exactly what the front office should be doing. And then even worse, I definitely didn't know how to hold them accountable. So every time I would go up front to try to talk to them about certain things, I felt really like I had very little credibility. And so I felt like I believed anything they said. And so I have found that other doctors have that same level of just maybe unease with knowing how to hold accountable front office team members. So I am bringing back the amazing Debbie Dodson. Debbie, introduce yourself just in case anybody doesn't know you.
I am Debbie. Thank you for having me. I've been here with Dr. Casmel. It will be 9 years this year. So yeah. And
congratulations.
I've been in all parts of the dental office. So
yes, she has been in every position. She started out as a hygienist, actually. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, and she is still, just so everybody knows, she does not smoke. She is getting over the same credit as everybody.
My voice is
yeah. Well, and then
all
of course the amazing Ashley is with us to co-host and kind of put her 2 cents in, as it's always so valuable. So I'm going to just kind of start and dig in and really, let's set the baseline for where do we even begin with a front office team. And we're just going to start with really what are some of the basic positions that are in a front office and the kind of most rudimentary expectations per position. I want to first say, offices, you don't have to have all of these positions and you don't have to name them necessarily this. It's not the name that matters, it's the expectations and the metrics that the position can actually influence. That's the most important. So we're going to tell you what our names of these positions are, and then you guys know that you can change it to make sense for your office.
Of course. Yes. In our office, we have scheduling coordinators, which mainly focuses on hygiene, and then treatment coordinators who focus on treatment, and then insurance coordinators. Now, depending on what your patient base looks like, one person may be all of those positions. When I came the first year that I worked with you, Dr. Casmel, it was me up front, and I was every single one of those positions and could handle it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But as your patient base grows, you'll need to kind of relook at those. But you want me to go into KPIs? Or
well, let's start with so the first position she just stated was the scheduling coordinator, which for us really tackles mostly maintaining the hygiene schedule, ensuring that all hygienists in the practice are scheduled appropriately to goal and efficiently. In some practices, a scheduling coordinator, I think you were saying, sometimes can actually be all clinicians. They may be overseeing the true schedule of both doctors or doctor and hygienists.
Yes.
But with that, what do we see as really those main expectations of a true scheduling coordinator?
In our office, the main expectations or KPIs are going to be scheduling those hygienists to their daily goal. And you can put a certain percentage to that and track those throughout the month. It can be reactivation attempts to help get those providers to that daily goal. And along with that, you might want to track those reactivation attempts. How do you get the best results? Do you get them by texting? Do you get them by phone calls? What times of the day gives you the best results? So being able to track each of those attempts to see what gets the best result for you. And then we also like to put a set dollar amount for the month that we were able to reactivate and put back on the schedule. So those are the ones. You can put any KPIs that you want to in place for any other expectations or responsibilities that the front office person may have. You could put KPIs in place to go along with those. or quarterly. You can set different KPIs if you want to switch them up a little bit.
And sometimes I find teams are focusing on really specific things like growing the new patient piece. Well, then maybe you want new patient conversion of calls or tracking every resource or referral, that calls. Sometimes they want to add a KPI that scheduling coordinator is responsible for, the internal referral program and making sure that every patient is, past some sort of internal referral card. So you get to choose to some degree what that scheduling coordinator's expectations are. But in our offices, like I said, their main goal is, they want to answer the phones, be the concierge for the patients, really wow them when they come in, and then ensure more than anything that for me, that really the number one metric is scheduling hygienist to goal. And really their number two is, I like to joke, is doing whatever it takes to do number one.
Yeah.
I like that. Did you guys involve, your scheduling coordinators when you were setting those? Did you ask what?
Well, so I think, I think as they progress, a lot of times when you're getting new people in, they don't know. And so.
Well, sure. I guess if you weren't doing this to start with, I don't know, but okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And as your scheduling coordinators start to get more sophisticated, much like hygienists, you don't need to track fluoride anymore. Sometimes with hygienists, their percentage is always going to be above 90%. I find you no longer with certain scheduling coordinators, I don't have to tell Delcy, convert a new patient. I don't have to tell her to answer the phone within 2 rings and do it kindly.
Right.
That's not a metric we have to track anymore. But to your point, as they grow and they become more sophisticated, I think you can say, hey, I'm super excited about taking on, internal referral program. Can I get your help and we can track it by blank? Cool. So that's a great question. I think coming right out of the gate, the one thing that I think sometimes happens is we want them to focus on 10 KPIs.
Right.
And I tell them when 10 things are important, then sometimes they don't know what's the most important. Hence the fact that I never want to take their eyes off of the most important thing is the schedule that day. So even as they're scheduling, they're prepping for the schedule, the SCs are looking at it such that they're looking out a week ahead. And this is part of their whole KPI metric is the hygienist A to goal? If not, what do I need to do? Is there anything I can do at this time? And if something breaks down in the schedule, they know I'm the first one. It is my responsibility to fill that hole. Sometimes if there's too many hands in the pot and it's a little bit this person, it's a little bit this person, it's a little bit this person, those holes form and they're all busy doing things on that 10, that list of 10, but nobody's actually focusing on what's going to make the biggest impact that day. And we have found that even in our own offices, sometimes if we don't reinforce what's the most important thing, they'll start going on tangents to do lots of little things that are still urgent, but just maybe not important. So I don't know if that answered or made that question.
Yeah. No, I like that.
So I think SCs, you need to set the expectation based on where they are in training.
Right.
And then having something written will be helpful, which Debbie's going to get to here in a bit, that it sits on all of their desks. We're going to get to that later in the webinar, but let's move on to treatment coordinators as kind of that next role that Debbie was saying in our office. And that is definitely a very different personality and a very different position than SCs. So I do want to make sure that that is known. Having them bleed over into each other a ton can get a little bit difficult just due to personality types as well.
Yeah. And the treatment coordinator is going to be really focusing more and working more with the patients, going over treatment plans. So they should be able to answer questions if the patient has questions about their treatment. They should be able to answer those questions, I feel. Any financial questions that come up, they should be able to answer those questions and be able to just talk with the patient about finances and not be awkward or tense and be able to work that treatment plan into their budget using different payment plans in the office. Using third-party finance lenders is helpful too. They need to know that. And then case acceptance is one of the main KPIs for our treatment coordinators. And we'll go further into that just a little bit. And then making sure that the treatment plans they are presenting to the patients are very accurate. And working with the insurance coordinator if you have a separate one of those. So those two might be working together more closely. And treatment reactivation. They're going to follow up on outstanding treatment that hasn't been scheduled, and also scheduling those providers to their daily goal. Yeah.
So once again, those people are just very different position than scheduling coordinator. They're probably not likely the ones who are necessarily going to be at the check-in desk. They're not usually the first person that answers the phone because they need to be more readily available to present treatment plans. So often they tend to be more at the checkout desk just because they're coming up with the patient after scheduling them in the operatory and helping to check them out. If not in the back, then usually at the checkout counter. Sometimes those things can bleed over, but ideally, they both have their tasks to really focus on to best serve the patients that are in the office, right now. If the doctor's schedule falls apart, it's often helpful to have the treatment coordinator be the first one to start attacking that, because they know so well all the treatment plans and the previous, week, month, the treatment plans that didn't get scheduled or wanted to be moved up. So often the scheduling coordinators are the ones who do the hygiene schedule. Treatment coordinators tend to do doctor's schedule.
Correct.
So very different positions. Now, once in a while, it's one and the same.
Yeah.
It's one person depending on the flow of an office and what's needed, or short-staffed. It can be all of those. But ideally, some very different positions. They also, when they schedule prep, these treatment coordinators are looking at different things than the scheduling coordinator was. They're really looking at, are the doctors to goal if they do have goals. They're looking to see, is the treatment plans all already in there and signed? Do they have signed treatment plans all ready for that day or that upcoming week? They're looking for inefficiencies within the day, which RTCs are looking for all the time. Is there something that's inefficient, and could we put something on the side or in a different place? So 2 different roles for 2 different things, but if they're each focusing on what they should, and we're going to give you some more of those metrics and checklists, it really does make a big difference to creating more productive, efficient days per position. So anything with those 2 ladies that I left out?
The only thing I would say, just to add to the treatment coordinator, is working closely with the doctor. Often they'll hear questions from the patient, or the patient will say something different. Like, we hear this sometimes a lot. Well, the doctor said it wasn't important, so I'm not going to schedule that. So anything that comes up like that, treatment coordinator should get with the doctor and say, hey, here's what the patient said, tell me how that went when you were going over that treatment. So that, if they didn't express urgency, we've given them feedback that they can start to change their verbiage a little bit and help get that treatment scheduled.
Yes, I love that. Because often doctors literally think, like, they walk out of the room and they're like, that's a done deal.
Yeah.
I crushed it. And then the TC gets to hear all these funny questions that the patient's like, I don't understand. Or, often the same questions come up, by the way, especially as you're trying to introduce new procedures. As you're introducing new procedures, you should expect that the TCs are going to get a whole host of new questions that they don't know how to answer. And so meeting with your TCs at the end of the day and kind of hashing out, like, gosh, show me what scheduled, what didn't schedule, and why, that can become part of their feedback loop, and also a great way to hold each other accountable. That was a great point, Debbie, for sure. So let's move on to the insurance coordinator. Now, once again, this may be partially with the TCs. A lot of times in offices, the TC takes over AR, and the scheduling coordinator takes over a lot of the insurance verifications. If you have PPO or not, if you participate or work with any insurances, you need some sort of insurance verification and somebody overseeing insurance AR and patient AR. So sometimes the SC and TC split that. In other offices, they have a true insurance coordinator who does the bulk of that. So let's pretend that's an office that maybe is ready to kind of have that as a separate position. What would you say for expectations there, Debbie?
So for expectations for insurance coordinator, we would want the collection to be a certain percentage. AR will have certain percentages broken down into current percentage, 30-day percentage, 60, 90-day. Insurance benefits, we want to make sure those are accurate based on your office and what procedures you do. Make sure that you're building your insurance verification on those procedures that you're doing pretty well over and over again. And that's the breakdown that you'll want to put in the software that you're using for the treatment coordinator, so they can build accurate treatment plans. And then make sure that they're collecting over-the-counter co-insurance amounts, and that could be a certain percentage too. In other words, if you're not collecting over the counter, then your AR is going to be pretty jacked up probably. And just lots of work on the back end. So working closely with that TC. Yeah,
for sure. And that's what I find is usually the insurance person, even though ours is all remote, it's not really, we do utilize eAssist a little bit, which we'll talk about, but really we have actual people who used to work in the office now work actually remote, but they work really closely with our entire front office. And their expectations though are completely around patient AR, insurance AR, staying within healthy percentages for AR, really responding to patient AR quickly, but they also schedule prep differently as well. So part of their expectations for insurance coordinator is just like the TC was looking through the schedule for all signed treatment plans, inefficiencies of the appointments, they're looking for updated insurance tables. Is there anything that wasn't verified correctly? They're also looking sometimes quickly at especially bigger treatment plans. Was everything signed and are we ready for that bigger appointment? Worst thing ever, as we all know, is somebody comes into the office for this $5,000, $10,000 treatment, and we didn't have everything, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So the insurance coordinator, part of their expectation is schedule prepping as well ahead of time, a week ahead, looking at all of that. And we have people who do that remote for us. But I think making sure that somebody is overseeing all of these different metrics is actually relatively easy when it comes to, you'll see kind of checklists and numbers. It's really understanding the insurance part that can be tough for doctors. So we'll dive into that.
I think tough for anyone, to be fair.
It is. It is. It's always changing, and so having somebody who can really help you with that, which, like I said, we'll dive into a little bit more in that area because it is such a tough one. But it's even tougher when, say, the scheduling coordinator or treatment coordinator are potentially trying to do that as well as things in office for the patients and oversee the schedule. So just so you know too, there's other roles that can be potentially, delegated in the front office as far as titles. And I don't know, Ash, if you've heard of some other ones, but once again, I'm always like, it's not really the title so much that matters is what they do and the metrics that they can influence. If they can't influence the metrics to move positively for the office, then that's really where I'm more concerned. So there may be other positions. We kind of try to break it down to some of the most simplistic based on the names. Anything else there, ladies, though?
I don't think so. Yeah, no matter what position you come, I'm sorry, Ashley, no matter what.
No, I was agreeing with you.
No matter what position you come up with, yes, I agree, put those metrics in place and make sure they know the expectations. Yeah.
And I think too, one thing I do want to say is FOA, which everybody has access to, has a really good kind of springboard starting place for people who are looking for some of this. It's like right at your fingertips. I tell doctors, if you're trying to look for really some baseline numbers, some baseline ideas to how to take these positions and help onboard people in these ideas that we just discussed.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the reason it was created, especially just because there's so much, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
And so at least helps to lay a foundation for someone who's new, or even the doc, if you're coming in and you're owning your own practice for the first time ever, you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot that you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really good place to start. Like you said, just for starting with that foundation.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, and I firmly believe that, if a new doctor is starting his own practice, or even Dr. Casmel, when she, um, you know, didn't understand exactly what was happening up front, she actually came up front and worked up front to just take part,
Mhm.
to see what was going on. I think it's super helpful for the doctors to go up there. And I think the team members respect that,
Mhm.
that they care enough to see what they're doing. Yeah.
And that's where I'm always like, doctors, I know it feels weird sometimes to go up and do that, but honestly, I was just so like, I need to know how to do this. And I was like, I don't have any ego because I'm so far behind the curve. I feel like I'm like, I need to know what these numbers mean. So I didn't even think about an ego play. I was just so desperate for help. I was like, somebody help me. Just show me the way.
Yeah, I love that though. It's a win-win, right? It's your
It
team. You're going to
is.
get some respect from the team, and you get the knowledge of this position that you have just absolutely no clue in. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
if you don't have, if you don't have somebody join the team who can truly lead the way, there are resources. I want to say that too. And I am such a huge believer in doctors. There are resources to learn. It's just that it's way more fun to learn a lot of times, like some of the cool clinical CE. This stuff is not nearly as fun or sexy, but it really does help to establish credibility with your team and just you understanding. It helps so much when you understand. So, but yeah, so I mean, we kind of discussed, understanding what each roles are, what the expectations kind of per position. Like I said, we'll have some resources available. I will say, and I'm going to kind of quickly go through this next part though of, if it's important to realize like the number of people that you're going to need in your office is definitely predicated on the flow of patients, how many patients are coming in and out, how quick are the hygiene appointments, are you a PPO or Medicaid type office? That's obviously going to potentially increase the number of patients and also the amount of insurance verifications, things like that need to be done. Number of providers, number of new patients. So I do think it's important to take all that in account as you're looking at how many people you need. And for me, and this is my humble opinion, I'd love you ladies, take on this, but I will always and forever want, if possible, to keep as much insurance verifying and AR type stuff out of the front office so that they can truly focus on the patients that are in the office in front of them, scheduling to goal. If they're on an insurance verification that's lasting 45 minutes and a hole just pops up, I'm dying on the inside.
And they are too.
And they're dying. We've talked about them. They're dying because they don't know which one to do first.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I will say that trying to remove that from the front office has been incredibly helpful. And there's so many different avenues to go about it. I'm not going to get into all of them, but your ladies' take on that?
What I love that you said here, and we just had the dental success all team meeting in Omaha last week or the weekend before. And we talked about, as leaders, communicating what the goal of something is. So then the team sometimes might have an easier way to go about it, or they know how to prioritize from there. So if you're telling your team, hey, the goal is always today's schedule and the patient in front of you, like no matter what, it's about those two things first, then they know how to prioritize. They know what to do first. And you have to share though what is priority for you and what is important. Otherwise, after a 45-minute call, they're like, I'm not giving up on this. Like, I get that too, because that's hard, man. but it's a place to start at least in communicating like, hey, that these are the things that are important and these are the things that are priority, because then they know what the number one thing of their position is.
Mhm. Yeah, and then when you see things start, because I've been in that spot where I've been scheduling coordinator, I've checked in, I've checked out, I've gone over treatment plans, holes popped open in the schedule and tried to get that filled, and then I'm working on tomorrow, maybe I'm behind on insurance verification. When you see things starting to drop, it might be time. I mean, look at always if the team member is efficient, with their time, but it might be just time to get that off, because I remember just like,
Ugh.
I can't do this.
Yeah. There's no way to do all of it.
Yeah.
Well, and doctors always say to me, does it really take that long to to check all the insurances? I'm like, I've done
Yes.
it. I'm like, it's worse than you think, actually. I'm like, it's, oh, God
And
bless.
that has to be done too.
Yeah,
Just
it does. And it's a super important part. So I won't belabor it, but sometimes I think too, just getting some of that out of the front office. And for us, we were able to not necessarily use a third party for the insurance verifier, position. We have somebody who used to work in the office who now does it remotely. Because this is a department that can be pretty darn remote. Which I do think, Ash, we did a webinar on this not too long ago that you can go back and check out as well. But
yeah,
I think
I'll find that and link it.
That can free up a ton of time for your front office and really help. If you have two up there, it can really help to supercharge them too, because they're excited. They get to do the stuff they want to do, which is hang with the patients more usually. But like Debbie said, check their efficiency measures too, if they're trying to call to reactivate people at 10 a.m. may not be the best choices, maybe helping them to use texts and things like that. We just, we switched to Mango, and I know a lot of people know this, but there's really cool bounce back text features that, a front office person who might be busy, if they're trying to give their attention to that person who's in the office, it allows them to, a text will automatically go to that patient that just says, hey, we missed your call, but please feel free to respond to this text and we'll get right back to you. So that way the patient knows that they saw it, and things like that. And then the team loves it because they can just do everything via text and be way more efficient. So there are lots of efficiency things that can help the front office between Modento and Flex and all of those that we've talked about a million times. So definitely using that, but then also potentially outsourcing insurance if you're looking to hold them accountable to their true jobs that they have in front of them. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, we know the positions, we kind of know what expectations per position, we have kind of an idea of what can stay at the front office, maybe what we want to remove. Now we want to get to the part where I was telling Debbie right before this, a doctor's like, yes, I have all of this. Now what checklist and like, what do I go up and say to my scheduling coordinator? How do I objectively hold them accountable? Because I don't know what to say. So Debbie, help us out. How about for the scheduling coordinator position, kind of what would that checklist look like?
So the checklist that I like to use is really simple, and it consists of what absolutely has to get done today. And it could be I don't know, voicemails, of course, they have to get that done, emails, it's super simple. Scheduling any broken appointments that fall off the schedule, even that is really not on our basic checklist. We like to put that on our end of day sheet, because really those are focused on their KPIs. And I don't really favor putting KPIs on a checklist and checking it off. I really want the ladies to focus on, reactivation attempts, how many texts went out, how many calls, how many did I get scheduled back on the schedule, what dollar amount did I schedule? Because I like them to actually see the results that they've been shooting for on their end of day sheet. So every day they have those metrics on their sheet, and they'll put those metrics daily into a weekly spreadsheet. We like to use Google Sheets. So if the doctor wanted to check them daily, they would hand those in physically. So they could put a simplified checklist up top and their KPIs down bottom and hand those in to the doctor or whoever is overseeing those KPIs. Or you can post them on Slack. So everybody in our office sees everything. So we are all holding each other accountable. And then just that weekly spreadsheet to see weekly how they're doing on those KPIs.
Yeah. So I think real quick too, to clarify, the language we're using is the checklist is really just the stuff to get done in a day that just has to get done. Whereas the KPIs that they're responsible for by the end of the day are the true metrics that will move the needle forward. You know, checking emails by 10 a.m. would be on the checklist.
Mm-hmm.
That is a checklist for them to follow and check off. You know, checking email, checking whatever, you know, that's on the checklist. Whereas the end of day is actually, okay, and I reactivated this much. I did, this is my actual KPIs. And we'll have that as a resource also to link, you know, the kind of front office end of day type, you know, whole front office end of day numbers that get put on. I get them every day on with a packet on my desk still. And then they still turn in their end of day numbers as well.
Right.
And then
I think that's a really important distinction, is the end of day versus like throughout the day. That's a big difference for sure.
Yeah.
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 Because you can do you can checklist
You can,
everything, but actually not have a really win of the
Yeah.
day. So
Mhm.
not do anything that's actually productive.
Yeah.
So what about the treatment coordinators?
Same thing. It would be go over treatment plans. That's going to be their main role for the day. And then putting all of that information, we use a treatment tracker in our office. So they'll put that information in there, and then same thing, have their KPIs that they'll post for the end of the day. So we can put those in for you to see those
In the resource center.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really their end of day kind of win sheet at the bottom is really how many did I present treatment plans? How many did I sell? How many big cases did I go through? And what was the percentage and dollar amount that I actually convert? But yeah, they're also responsible for checking, you know, are there different third party vendors that we could use to help patients, especially now with things kind of in a little bit of disarray right now with the economy. You know, this has become one of their kind of pressing things that I've really asked of them. So that can become something for their checklist versus win sheet at the bottom. And then insurance coordinators, they have their own too for us, even though they're remote.
Yeah, they post theirs, like how many insurance verifications they did during the day, and because we want them to use their time efficiently as well. I don't want them to spend hours on one verification.
Yeah. So they'll have their same, you know, checklist of things that have to get done, you know, throughout the day that are urgent, but then really at the end of the day, have they actually made headwind on 30, 60, 90,
Right.
You know, they have to actually be able to show those numbers as well. Did they schedule prep a week ahead? Things like that. So, you know, like I said, I hear a lot of times though, you know, doctors telling me, well, I talked to the team up front. I'm sure that this is prior to having any of this information, any of these checklists, but, you know, my team always says, yeah, I'm just too busy. There's no way I can get to all of this. To which we say, what, Ashley, to doctors?
Sorry, I cut out for a second. What was the question?
I said, because I'm sure there was a moment.
My internet's going out.
You're like, don't ask me questions.
Right now.
So I said, because I'm sure you've heard this from doctors because of FOA and things like that. So I go up to my front desk, and anytime I go up there, I say to them, hey, I need you guys to do this or that. And they're like frantic, and they're like, there's too much to do. I just can't get anything done. I cannot get all of this done. What's the answer to this, doctors? Like, what do we say to these doctors as their next step? What do we do here?
Delegate.
Delegate. Always.
I feel like I don't have the answer. I'm trying to like, tell me what I need to say here.
Well, I do feel like they need to kind of have, it is nice that if they're aware of what's going on. For example, if you hear lots of chit chat up there, like, how was your weekend? Well, they're probably wasting a lot of time and they're not being efficient. And there is a lot to do up there. But I feel like maybe they just don't know what to prioritize. And that's the reason I really like a simplified checklist for the day, because it really lets them know if I don't get anything else done today, I have to get this done. And then they can, work on their KPIs in between and learn how to prioritize what doesn't have to be done today can be put on tomorrow. Set patient expectations up, of course, but that's how I like to kind of run it. And because it's a lot. I mean, there's phone calls, there's people checking in, there's people checking out, there's treatment plans, sometimes 2 or 3 at once. And it's just a lot to figure out what is the most important thing to do. So it helps them to prioritize and do today what has to get done. So if they're focusing on everything, yes, it's going to be complete chaos. And it often, you're just exhausted by the end of the day. And
one thing that I, tell doctors is because often they walk up front and they just don't know what they don't know. And they may have a few checklists, they may have a few things, but they just don't really know is, one of the metrics that I heard a long time ago was that really one person can effectively only do like check in, check out, kind of complete the loop for the most part is 20. Well, if you think of that, that's really only one hygienist and one doctor a lot of times, depending on if the doctor is 2 assistants, column and a half, and a hygienist is seeing 8 to 10 patients a day. That's actually, a pretty small number. And then if you're trying to increase new patients, you may blow through one person pretty quick trying to do all of those. So if we use 20 as just kind of that baseline metric, then look and see, okay, if we hire 2, if we're trying to grow the practice, you may end up hiring somebody slightly premature, but then you can actually get them quickly, understanding how to do scheduling coordinator, and then potentially move the right person into treatment coordinator. The other thing is often with growing offices, which are pretty much everyone listening to this, I'm almost positive, one person is hard pressed to be good at all those things is what I find. And so I would never tell somebody to hire without reason, but just know that you may even have one person and still want to outsource insurance. And yes, they may have a slight more free time to work on treatment plans, training, learning all the parts of the office, but sometimes it frees them up to be more patient centric, which if that's what you're trying to grow, that can be helpful. So doctors, as you're going up there, you're just unsure, yes, try to be present, try to listen, try to watch, what the flow of the office is. 20 can be kind of a baseline metric for what one person could potentially do. But remember, like I said, if you're high PPO, high volume, if you turn over rooms quickly, you are a bread and butter practice that turns over lots of patients, it may be time to look at potentially either hiring another person or outsourcing more, like I said, of that billing. So there's no definite answer. I wish the 20 was just the metric that somebody gave me that helped me at least have an idea. So hopefully that's helpful.
I think too, just to go back to that, I really think it's important to harp on the different skills. Like you said, like some people are good in person, face to face. Some people want to be, tracking, following up on AR, that type of thing, because they're not such a, kind of people person or wanting to be on the phone. And asking people, hey, what do you enjoy and where do you like to be? Like if you can put people in the right places, like it's like putting the pieces of the puzzle together to make the machine work, and it will work more efficiently when the pieces are in the right place. So and the other thing I wanted to touch on too is we talk about checklists, and downtime checklists are a big thing too, that if you do have someone maybe you've hired and they're not totally busy on that one thing all the time, if there's a downtime checklist for the office as well, there's other things that can be worked on, and there's always, I think, something that can be done in an office.
Absolutely. Schedule prepping, reactivation, almost always something that you can have them. They just don't often necessarily know.
Sure.
And to that point, you know, as you said, a lot of times, you know, the scheduling coordinator, because they have such a different personality than a treatment coordinator, once again, that one person may be amazing with greeting patients, but I'll be honest, like it's really tough for them to sell a $10,000 treatment plan, get conversion, and set the patient up for success. Not to say it can't be, you know, that person, but I've just found that often a treatment coordinator has a totally different emotional IQ often than, say, a scheduling coordinator. Just their personalities are very different. And so I think it's important that as you're growing, as you're looking at what your office needs, when they say they're just too busy, sometimes the first thing to look at is what's actually going on. You can have them. I don't like to use the word time journal because that makes people panic and say, I already don't have enough time and now you're going to tell me to time journal. So I instead, as everybody knows, I just say task journal. Like I would rather you almost just write out, it took me 3 hours to do insurance verifications for next week.
Yeah.
I'm making stuff up. It took me whatever to do. You know, I was on this new patient phone call for 27 minutes. That is actually more helpful to me, like task journals of what task it did and what's eating up your time. I find that helpful. And sometimes doctors, when you just don't know, you know their expectations, you know what they should be getting done during the day and what their, you know, end of day kind of win metrics are, but they just still are having a hard time getting things done. Find out what's sucking up their time now, currently. Just brief task journal. I think they tend to get defensive when it's like, you're not being efficient. Well, to them, they're being as efficient as they know how. And often we have to see what's sucking up their time, look at it from afar and say, wait a minute, maybe we just need to reprioritize or redistribute, or like you said, Ashley, you had it right, just delegate. Just try to figure out, do we need to redistribute? Because as times change and things change, you know, we may need to figure out something else to delegate out or something else to redistribute or refocus. Sometimes we just lose sight of what's what we're supposed to be focusing on.
Yeah.
So starting
another point to that too is the delegate thing. You know, sometimes there's another position within the office that's just admin assistant, you know, someone who is building the form, you know, to the building the actual checklist, someone who's maybe maintaining referral relationships. You know, I think there's sometimes you know, tasks that are needing to get done throughout the office, planning the team event, you know, like that are needing to get done throughout the office that just no one seems to have time for, and can bog down, you know, kind of that machine and that the patient centric tasks that can be delegated to another team member as well. If you know, if there isn't truly enough time, of course, it's when you're getting to a larger scale and that type of thing, but it's something that can be considered too.
Absolutely. As you know, we love our admin assistants, and they're a remote team that really a lot of the things that we've talked about, we create, we send to them, they make pretty, they edit it, they put it all together, they distribute everything. So yeah, sometimes too, I don't really need a whole nother full-time front office person. I just need somebody to do social media posts, you know, put together new patient bags, get all the cool swag, you know, ordered or whatever. That can all be, you know, moved to an admin assistant. And that's I can tell you from experience, I'm sure Ashley will put her information on this webinar. It's the best position to fill right now. And she just has done, I think, 3 of mine, and they're all still with me, and they're all amazing. And they really have changed so much of, I think, taking stuff off of Debbie's plate. Yeah,
we love it.
We love it. Yeah. So you don't need necessarily to have them even in office. So that's a great point.
Love it.
So yeah, so I mean, I think just to wrap everything up and start, you know, kind of from the beginning, is doctors, if you're looking at what do I need to do, to really hold these people accountable in the front office when I don't necessarily know what they're doing, or what should be done. I think starting with educate yourself. Of course, like we said, FOA has some good resources for sure. But understand what the different positions are. Try hard to put expectations specific to that role with metrics that they can influence specific to that role. As much as possible, don't have multiple people responsible for multiple things. The more hands that are in it, then the more they blame each other. So
Totally.
So we'll give you guys some checklists and resources and things like that on this webinar. I think, also being able to, as things start getting busier, go up and have the conversation of, where is everything at right now? What's the feeling in the front office? Are we getting our checklist done? Because you are using those checklists and those end-of-day numbers to really audit them. That's how you objectively hold them accountable and feel like you can have the conversation. When they're falling short on those numbers, that's when you can have those conversations of what's happening now. Do we need to task journal? Do we need to outsource something? What do we need to do to make sure that we can get the main things that need to get done for the sake of the patients? And then I think from there, after you've kind of redistributed, delegated, outsourced potentially, let things level for a bit, see if their numbers, begin to improve because they're focusing more stringently on what they need to. You want to maximize everybody's potential while they're in the office, but you want it to also not be so hectic and frenzied that they feel like they're going to have a panic attack up there all the time too. So, so it is kind of that balancing act. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, within this webinar, people were able to kind of gain a perspective of the different roles, responsibilities, and then the checklists and metrics that each position can be responsible for, conversations to be able to have, things to be able to outsource, including an admin team that might be able to help 5 to 10 hours a week and kind of help take some of the burden off as well, as an outsourced kind of help to the team.
Love it.
And yeah, audit the system about every quarter just to determine maybe we need to shake things up or change things. Look at these numbers, because that's what those win numbers are for. If you have a treatment coordinator who is just not having any wins, the feedback loop is happening with the doctors. Sometimes it's time to figure out, that's what those numbers are for, is to be able to say something's not working. And it doesn't mean it's the person, it just means something in the system is not working. And maybe it's a right person, wrong seat. Maybe it's truly just training or verbiage, but that's what these checklists and these numbers are for, is to start those conversations objectively, doctors, so that you can feel good about, like I said, not attacking really that person, but just attacking, the numbers we're seeing of how to improve them together.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah. Anything else, ladies, that I didn't include?
I think we covered it. I mean, we've touched on it in these webinars before, but as the owner, you're the captain of the ship, and you have to put some effort into understanding the role before you can expect somebody else to do it. You don't have to know every single detail, but you have to have some general idea of what's happening. And I think we just have to, kind of hammer that one home, is that you might have to dedicate some time into that. And what is it? Rory Vaden has the 30x rule. Like you have to train someone 30 times as long as the actual task takes. So you have to understand the task to be able to delegate this to somebody, to be able to hold them accountable, I think is the main point. You can't hold somebody accountable if you don't understand it yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which I think is probably part of what makes it so tough, right?
Totally. It's intimidating.
Yep. Yep. Well, and it feels like there's just a lot on doctors' plates, especially in the beginning.
Totally.
So yeah, I understand. Well, hopefully that's why we're here, is to help shorten the learning curve as much as we possibly can. But hopefully there are some good tidbits in there. We'll have some good resources, Ashley's services on there, and other webinars that might be helpful in conjunction with this one as well. So thank you, ladies, as always, for spending your time. I appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you for all of you who joined us live. We had quite a few in our room with us today, so that was awesome. And yes, thank you, Debbie, again. I hope you get your voice back to 100%. I hope Summer's hand heals up, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.